Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Hispanic Patriot Podcast. Tonight, I'm your co-host, Hugo Chavez. My intrepid young co-host, Nicholas Razo, is currently um, detained with due to a family matter. So let's keep him and his family in our prayers. Tonight, we're going to thread through three strands that keep surfacing in our national conversation: accountability and leadership, the ongoing drama of American politics around current President Donald Trump, and the perilous, complicated geopolitics around Iran and the ongoing war. So we also have an interview tonight with one of the Republican candidates for Colorado Attorney General, Mr. David Wilson. He will be joining us in a few minutes for that interview. But before that, let's get into a little bit of what's going on right now. This is not a lullaby. This is a wake-up call for a country that keeps bending the rules to placate the loudest voices in the room. At least that's what the left wants you to believe. That's not what we believe here. Today, we cut through the noise on three hot button threads that define our moment. We're not chasing glittering headlines. We're defending the bedrock: truth, restraint, and unwavering national interest. Let's start with accountability and leadership. In politics, you're told to trust the process. But process without integrity is a mirage. And, we all are very familiar with the left wing media and their constant attacks on this administration, and how they claim the moral high ground when in fact they are below the basement, in my opinion, with their constant attacks on this administration and what needs to be done to secure global stability, um, protecting American interests, and also in particular what we're doing, or what the president is doing about China and Russia, which are our two biggest adversaries. This is often ignored. Um, People want to jump up and cry foul because President Trump went into Venezuela and arrested Maduro, who was a drug running despot dictator who was running his country into the ground, following Hugo Chavez. No relation to me, by the way. My name is Chavez Ray, but I often get kidded about that. But the president did what needed to be done in our hemisphere. Venezuela was a very real threat in the way it was structured. Maduro did not want to come to the table, and so the president did what he felt was in the best interest of the American people. And now he's sitting in a American jail awaiting trial and hopefully prosecution and conviction. But people overlook these little nuances that the president um, is involved with, and he does everything with the benefit of the American people in his mind. I firmly believe that. Uh, the oil fields in Venezuela are very rich, as most people know, and Venezuela was the main source of fuel for the Chinese. In fact, the Chinese have been trying to get a foothold in this hemisphere and are doing, or have been doing, a fairly good job until President Trump decided that enough was enough. So don't listen to all the narratives that come out of the left wing media, because their only goal is to oppose President Trump at every turn. That takes us into the Iran situation. In Iran, you know what has been taking place for the last 47 years. The fact is, Iran has been at war with us for 47 years. They have been killing Americans and American troops all over the world. They have been the world's foremost sponsor of terrorism. So the president is now doing what needed to be done, which was he tried diplomacy. It failed. They snubbed their nose at him. And anybody that knows President Trump should know that you don't snub your nose at President Trump. President Trump will do what he says and say what he does, what he means. So pay attention closely, folks. Yes, we're going through some economic times because of it. We're suffering some economic pain. But as I keep telling people, this is temporary. Okay? This is not a long-term situation that we're going to be involved with. And oil prices will come down. Gasoline prices will come down. Cost of living will come down. But the sole goal of the left right now is to cut President Trump off at the knees in these upcoming midterm elections. So be very careful what you believe and what you align with when it comes to this whole situation with Iran. Now I want to touch a little bit about Tina Peters. As everyone knows, especially here in Colorado, Tina is a figure that many Americans recognize as a flashpoint in the debate over election administration and the integrity of our vote. The question isn't who gets blamed in a political quarrel, it's whether our leaders will demand accountability, follow the facts wherever they lead, and protect the confidence that the American people place in the system. So we should insist on transparent investigations, verifiable evidence, and consequences for any misuse of public power, which I believe is exactly what Tina Peters did. And she paid the price for it because they went out and made an example of her and, in my opinion, wrongfully imprisoned her. She was a political prisoner. Now, thank God she has been released, thanks to the efforts of President Trump and a whole lot of others here in Colorado. So we thank the Lord for that, and we hope to have Tina on the show here in the not too distant future. But Tina, if you're watching out there, we love you, and we thank God that you are out of that stranglehold that the Colorado government had you in. So just remember, if you want to restore legitimacy in government, you don't settle for catchy slogans. You demand credible, independent scrutiny that can withstand the worst of party politics. So here we go with President Trump, Tina Peters, and what's going on around the world. And the question should never be whether you admire or dislike him. It should be whether the governing decisions, the warrants of law, and the long-term consequences align with American interests and constitutional norms. We here at the Hispanic Patriot fully stand behind President Trump, and we believe they do. So don't get caught up in the charisma, consistency when the cameras aren't rolling, respecting due process. All of that stuff is important, and with a respect for rule of law that outlasts every political era. So if we want a durable republic, we need to evaluate leadership by how it upholds the Constitution, how it guards civil liberties, and how it governs with humility and responsibility. We have some elections that are coming up here in Colorado that deal with every one of those issues. And we have to be on the lookout because the impulse to act now, is very real. There's a lot of division, of course. There's controversy between candidates. But the bottom line is we, as the American people, need to continue to support the president so that in these midterms, these despot Democrats don't take control and start undoing and basically short-circuiting what we elected President Trump to do. So just remember, the ecosystem loves shocks, not substance. It rewards spectacle, not standards. If you're listening, you deserve a host who insists on the facts, challenges the loudest narratives, and refuses to pretend that trust us is a substitute for verifiable evidence. Our job here is to demand accountability, to cut through the fog of rhetoric, and to push for policies that strengthen families, secure borders, protect economic policy opportunities, and restore faith in the institutions that make America greatness possible. And yes, a deliberate nod to satire, not to undercut seriousness, but to sharpen it. Now, if we're ever tempted to normalize extreme, show penalties for minor missteps, we're eroding the standards of fairness that keep a republic functional. Do you demand accountability no matter the name of the party? Facts over faction, prioritize a robust, credible deterrent plus diplomacy approach to Iran that minimizes risk and maximizes civilian safety? Then you've got to be cognizant of the fact that we laid out the principles of accountability, constitutional guardrails, and smart national security. It's time to bring those ideas into the room where policy becomes law and enforcement meets the courtroom. Now, Colorado's next Attorney General candidate embodies the question every voter asks: who will uphold the rule of law, protect victims, and stand up for citizens against overreach? So let's see. I believe we have, Mr. David Wilson is in our waiting room. So we're going to bring him in now and welcome him into the show. David, hello. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. How are you?
Thank you for coming on the show. And we want to, my co-host had to tend to some family issues, so it's just you and me tonight. We'll go on mano. All right. All right. So you're running for Attorney General. So let me introduce you to the audience, and who you are. David is an attorney licensed in New York, Connecticut, and Colorado. He is a retired Army JAG officer. His areas of expertise and practice have included prosecution, serving as a special assistant to U.S. Attorney, defense attorney, international and operational law attorney, and respondent parent counsel in dependency and neglect cases. Civil rights, constitutional law, whistleblower law, and more. His specialties include cyber operations and cybersecurity, having worked at an NSA and helping form what is now Cybercom. He has engaged in fighting the COVID mandates, assisting many service members, protecting parents' rights, and reunifying families, and fighting for the rights of Colorado citizens. He holds a master's in law in international and operational law, as well as one in intellectual property and information technology law. So that's quite a resume. So welcome to the show, and I'm going to open up by allowing you an opening statement to the audience so that people know where you're coming from, basically, and why you decided to jump into this Attorney General race. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Well, like you said, my name's David Wilson. I'm running for Attorney General. I am running because a lot of people asked me to. My wife and my wife is we both grew up in New York, but she's a New Yorican. So
we won't hold that against you.
Yeah. Well, we spent 20 years in the Army, had our eyes opened up, and when we got here to Colorado the second time, my wife said, "I'm not leaving. You're retiring. Go find a job." I'm like, "Yes, ma'am." So
I know that feeling.
We stayed here. That was in 2008. We landed back here. We've been here ever since. I retired in 2010. And then, like you said, I did cybersecurity consulting for a while because I worked at NSA while in the Army. I was a special assistant U.S. attorney and a prosecutor and defense counsel. And for about the last 10 years, I've been court appointed representing parents having their kids taken away by DHS, which has been really strenuous and emotionally draining. I have a lot of compassion for my clients. And it's just, at one point I had 100 cases. And so I've backed way out of that. I'm down to about 2 cases now in that arena. I have a number of civil cases that I filed, some still related to COVID and things like that. And I actually represented Tina Peters in 2022 during her recount lawsuit against Griswold when she ran for Secretary of State. And so I have a lot of variety of experience in different areas. And like I said, a lot of the people who asked me to run, I had met during COVID, and they said, you need to run because we need an alternative. We need somebody who's going to do something and change things. And my wife and I adopted her niece and nephew, who are now 10 and 11. So we still have young kids in school. And I couldn't sit on the couch anymore. I couldn't sit by and watch what was going on and not do anything about it. And so I got in the race about 8 days before assembly. No money, no name recognition, and no structure behind me. I went to assembly. I got 37% of the vote that got me on the ballot. And I had never been to assembly before, a state assembly like that. And I was told, wow, that was pretty impressive. I'm like, okay. And now I've just been plugging away, trying to send out the message and, get the word out. As you know, my opponent is the district attorney in El Paso County. He's got a lot of name recognition. So I'm fighting that aspect of it. But like I like to tell everybody, if you like status quo, continue voting for status quo. If you want change, vote for me, because my goal is to get in there and change things and then go home and retire. I'm not looking to move up the stepping stone or be a politician or anything like that. I've had enough jobs. I'm ready to, and with little kids still at home, they need a father there. So I want to change things for them and for you all, and then get out of there.
Great. Well, those are all very important topics indeed, and it's always refreshing to hear someone say they're not using this as a stepping stone to another political office. They want to serve because they believe in what they're doing. So those are things that we don't often hear.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when you hear it from somebody, they're not really telling the truth. But I have a feeling that you are in that category. Mm-hmm. So that alone sets you apart, and I think will ingratiate you to a lot of voters.
Well, and if I can just jump in real quick, one of the people, I won't name names, but one of the people who asked me to run, he said, one of your faults is you're brutally honest. I'm like, you got to be honest. I have to keep my own integrity, and I have to be able to, sleep with myself at night and know I did the right thing for the right reason.
Yep.
That's it. I'm not looking, and this is not about me. And I tell people, as soon as it becomes about you, then you're done. Get out, move on. It has to be about what you're trying to accomplish, not about yourself. And, I'm not looking for fame, fortune, or anything like that. I want to fix things and then move on, like I said. So.
Right. So you have an opponent in the primary. Mm-hmm. So give us a couple of things that differentiate you mm-hmm. from your opponent.
Sure. Like I said, he's the DA, district attorney for the 4th Judicial District, and that includes El Paso County and Teller County. And I don't fault him. He's one of those types that I'm making assumptions, but based on his actions, he wants the political position. He's been DA. This is his 2nd term as DA. Now he wants to be Attorney General. That's fine. Like I said, I'm not looking for that political position. If he was doing the job he should be doing, I wouldn't be here. I could be home enjoying my family. And 5.5 years now he's been DA. And one of the things he claims he's going to do is lower crime. Well, he's been DA for 5.5 years, and crime is going up. It's going in the wrong direction. Some of the people who asked me to run in 2024, I believe, or before that, had asked him to investigate election fraud and gave him packets of evidence. And I've spoken to those people on the technical side, and then the people who were canvassing and knocking on doors. And even at assembly, I met a young guy, he's probably late 20s. When I was walking the line as people were waiting to be checked in, and I asked him, what were his concerns? And he said, well, I asked, if you win, I asked your opponent, why didn't he investigate election fraud? And he said, I was never given evidence. Well, that I know is untrue. And maybe it was a technical thing he was saying, similar to at my speech at the assembly. I said he never did anything about the porn or obscenity in the schools. And I know Dr. Bill Swalwell and a number of people put a memo together and went and spoke to my opponent and showed him what was going on in the schools. And they had tried to work with the schools. They had gone to the superintendent and principals and things like that. And I think the latest count, at least from District 20, is there's about 1,500 of these disgusting books in the schools. 30 days after that meeting with my opponent, he issued a memo saying, well, I don't find a crime here. I find these laws unconstitutional. There's nothing I can do. Tell the parents to work with the schools. Well, they had tried that. That was not an option. I think he blew smoke at it and said, don't look at the man behind the curtain. What I would have done if I had been DA, I would have said, I'm starting an investigation. I'm making it very public, and you schools, you're on notice. If I find a crime here, I'm coming after you. So work with parents and get this stuff out of the schools. There's no reason for it to be in there. And I've never heard anybody give a good argument why this stuff should be in the schools. And he my opponent I went up to him after assembly, and I congratulated him and I shook his hand, and he said, just don't lie about me. And I said, I don't lie about anybody. And he mentioned the porn in the schools. And I think what he meant was, technically, did he do something? Yes, he issued a memo. Did he do anything to try and get rid of the porn in the schools? No. So in my opinion, he didn't do anything. And then you have Colorado is number 2 for violent crime in the nation. El Paso County is number 3 in the state. I forgot what number we are for auto theft. And, at one of his lectures, he said he appointed an assistant district attorney to prosecute auto theft. And I'm thinking, okay, that's nice, but it's a day late and a dollar short. Why weren't you doing this all along? Why is it now that we're into an election, or shortly before, you're trying to correct all this? So I'm not confident he will go into office and change anything. And then 2 other pieces. He did announce he's got a lot of money, and he's promised a lot of money if he gets through the primary. That reeks big establishment to me. And then the Denver Post just endorsed him. That reeks Democrat. We're not afraid of this guy, so that's who we want. So in my opinion, Denver Post is afraid of me, and the Democrats are afraid of me. They don't control me. Nobody controls me. I'm going to go in and do what's right for the people and for my family. And that's it. Nobody's going to come in and say, oh, well, you owe us now. We got you elected. No.
Yeah, well, those are all red flags in our opinion. Nothing drives me crazier than somebody that claims that there's no election fraud taking place in the state. It just boggles the mind, and we know who the players are in that arena, and we know who the fighters are. And one of the fighters, as you well know, is Tina Peters.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, you represented Tina?
In 2022. Correct? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what did that experience teach you about Colorado's election system?
It was frustrating. I wish we had the Supreme Court case. I think it's Boats that came out in January that said a candidate has standing, because when we sued in the district court and then the appellate court in 2022, we were thrown out both times on standing. And what I learned, because again, I never really got involved in politics. I didn't care about it, until it starts to have a serious impact. And I'm like, I can't sit by anymore. I have to do something. And at the time, we requested a recount. Jena Griswald. So the way it works is, if you're a candidate, you want to recount, you request that recount. The Secretary of State tells you, okay, here's how much it cost. And I told Tina, I said, look, this is a contract. You said, I want this service a recount. They said, this service will cost you this much for the recount. The terms of that contract, how you do a recount, they were written in the law in 2022. But instead, Jena Griswold issued a memo of her own, along with Dominion Voting Systems, and basically told all the clerks, no, you will do the recount according to this memo, not according to the law. And some of the clerks pushed back. Unfortunately, most of them didn't. And they kept taking the same sample ballots and just running them through the machine again and saying, look, see, we get the same result. But even their results weren't within the percentage margin they had to be legitimate. And so we just, it was, again, don't look at the man behind the curtain. And then apparently Griswold got the law changed like a year or two after that, so she could dictate how a recount would be done. And that it was just very discouraging. One of my recommendations was we needed to sue for breach of contract. But Tina was under a lot of pressure with the criminal charges and everything, so we never actually pursued that. But there was seriously a breach of contract. They did not follow the law.
So let me ask you a question related to the voting, and that is that we had an individual by the name of Jay Valentine last year. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he's an individual out of Texas who is not a political guy or anything like that. He's more of a data guy, and he started a campaign to go around and look at voter rolls around the country, and he started in Texas. He did come to Colorado and inspect the voter rolls in all 64 counties. And I can't remember the exact number, but it was somewhere in the 30 to 40 counties in the state of Colorado they found more votes cast than voters registered. And when he submitted those to the different counties to clean up their voter rolls, some of them complied and said, yes, we need to do that. Others said there's nothing to see here. And one of the things he made a really bold statement on our interview, and what he said was, if you think Colorado is blue, he said you're dead wrong. He says if you were to clean up the voter rolls in Colorado,
wow,
the state would be red. And because there are so many voters voting that shouldn't be voting, including those in places 6 feet under, and people who have moved to other states, which they never update. So here in this mail-in ballot state, they send out all these ballots just willy-nilly to the last known address. And of course, the powers that be, I call them, the nefarious ones, they know where these ballots are going address-wise. So they harvest those, and bottom line is they're using those ballots to cast votes for people that don't exist in the state anymore. But I don't know the intricacies of it, but what can an attorney general do with regards to situations like that where a county clerk is refusing to clean up their voter rolls? Is there any legal remedy there from an attorney general's perspective?
Well, I will definitely investigate the fraud in the elections. Like my opponent says he believes in election integrity. And I thought about that for a minute. And then I started, speaking out on the campaign trail and saying, yeah, but you can't have election integrity unless you address the fraud. And I know some people feel differently about it. I believe there was fraud. I believe in a lot of areas there still is fraud. But regardless of whether you believe it or not, people aren't going to feel like there is integrity unless it's investigated and it's either proven or disproven. It has to be one or the other. It can't just hang out there the way it is. And when people start yelling at you that there's no election fraud, then they're just full of it. They're lying because they can't make a valid argument, so they just scream at you at the top of their lungs. But as Attorney General, I would look at the laws, understand what they say, and then start talking to the clerks and say, look, here's what the law requires you to do to ensure the voter rolls are correct. You need to start correcting that. Nobody's holding anybody accountable by the law. And it's similar to when I was advising and consulting in cybersecurity. I did that from about 2011 to 2017. And the advice I gave in 2011 was the same advice I gave in 2017 and the same advice I would give now. People just aren't following the basics. We got to get back to the rule of law. And if you break the law, you pay the penalty. And we've gotten so far off. One of my, I don't want to say hero, but one of my favorite people is Rudy Giuliani. He cleaned up New York City. And he did that because he told the police commissioner, you go to the lowest level crime and you start working your way up. Somebody's caught spraying graffiti, arrest them. And like the detectives were so overworked, they would catch one or two people who robbed a place out of three or four. He said, no, you go get everybody. Don't just say, well, we got two of the three or two of the four. Go get everybody. And that's why he incrementally cleaned up New York City and became an awesome place. That's what we have to do. Back to basics, back to prosecuting, back to holding people accountable. Because when people think they can just get away with it, then and now, we can see a lot of the Democrats are just, waving it in our face. Well, I'm going to commit this crime right in front of you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
That's got to
Well,
change.
the legislature has done a very good job of weakening the legal system, in particular, auto theft, assault crimes, and also pedophiles. Pedophiles in the state get a free pass. It's like it's ridiculous, and I don't understand that because I got to believe the majority of those legislatures are married and they have families and kids. So how can they live with themselves and vote for policies that basically are soft on those types of crimes? Those should be some of the top crimes being prosecuted and hefty penalties issued with regard to those crimes, because to me, there's nothing more heinous than a predator upon children. So, that's the sad reality that we live in. We have to work on the legislature as well, but it'd be good to have a conservative attorney general. So what are some of the biggest examples of government overreach that you've witnessed in Colorado over the last 5 years?
Well, and real quick to your point, I think with a lot of what's going on with the legislature and everything, it all comes back to one thing. We started removing God from everything, out of the schools, out of legislative sessions, out of everything. No more prayer, no more, I remember, I think it was shortly after I retired, there was a Marine in a dining facility who had his Bible open, and he was charged with a crime because he was reading his Bible in the dining facility. That, we've got to go back to morality and back to God. That's what we need to do. But some of the things that I've seen, I always get his name mixed up because I think of Captain Phillips, the merchant marine captain who got taken by Somalis, but I think it's Jack Smith, Jack the Baker. I'll just
Jack
call him
Phillips. Yeah.
Jack Phillips. Okay.
Yep.
Um,
From Masterpiece Cake.
yes, that was horrible what they did to him, and they keep going after him. And I don't know, once the Supreme Court ruled, that should have been the end of it, but they just kept going after him and after him. And don't fool yourself. He tried to help those people find another baker. No, they wanted him. And I spoke to somebody about this the other day, because I'm actually also an Alliance Defending Freedom attorney. I don't get a lot of cases, but I am part of that organization. And they're the ones that defended him at the Supreme Court.
Yep.
And I spoke to somebody, and they said the original couple who wanted the cake, they didn't want to be made examples of and be used. And they were kind of pushed to do that against their will, almost like Roe versus Wade. Those women, they didn't really want to have anything to do with it. It was the second group that went after Jack that did that. They targeted him, and that was just horrific. And I actually spoke to him on the phone briefly a couple months back, and he picks up his own phone and answers it. He's a very nice guy, and I'm not sure if he's still facing legal issues. But at one point, I was part of the Colorado Bar Association Civil Rights Commission, and most of us were all conservatives, and we would get legislation and ask to give an opinion on it. And we would always get ruled by the General Bar Association, who didn't like what our opinion was. So after a while, I'm like, you know what? I can't be a part of this bar association anymore if that's how they're going to deal with things. So that's one of the big issues. I've also spoken to somebody named Christopher Gregory. I'm not sure if you know his name. He's the one that is uncovering the fraud and corruption in the Colorado Supreme Court. And I've been speaking to him about all that corruption that's going on. And even Scott Bottoms, when he put forward his resolution, I testified for that. Basically, to have an independent investigator from outside of Colorado come in and investigate our judiciary system. And and the Democrats they all voted, across party lines, no. And unfortunately, I was online at the time, but I would have stood up and said, no. So you want the corruption? Is that what you're voting for? And like Scott said, the Supreme Court of Colorado said we investigated ourselves and we found ourselves innocent.
Yep.
How can you get justice?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, this it's hilarious the circus that they run at the judiciary in this state, and they act like everything's peachy keen. But nothing to see over here. Just move along. Yeah, that's their attitude.
Yeah.
So, what do you see? What do you see as the Attorney General office play in defending parental rights? Because that's one of the top issues that I've seen. I've spoken to some of the organizations, Colorado for Kids, and some other groups that have sprung up because of the abuse, literal abuse, especially in some school districts, and some of them are down in Colorado Springs, where parents have vociferously stood up against the system, and they've been dismissed out of hand. What would you see as the Attorney General office role in fighting that, because it is such an egregious thing that's taking place in the schools?
Yeah. Well, first, making sure that the attacks on parental rights stop. I represented a lady whose son, they claimed he was being abused, and this kid was an adult. They claimed he was being abused, but they wouldn't give any information. Where did this report come from? Who issued the report? What evidence did they have? And it shouldn't be that a parent has to find all that out when they actually end up going to court. And whether they have to pay out of pocket or they get a court-appointed attorney, that's very stressful for that parent and that family. Also, there's a school board going on tonight, and there was going to be a vote about whether or not parents have the right to know what goes on with their kids in the school. Well, that's a no-brainer. Obviously, they do. And so this group, I sent them a Supreme Court case, Troxelville Granville, which basically the Supreme Court said 14th Amendment applies, parents have due process rights, and the parents are in the best position to know what's best for their child.
Yep.
Supreme Court ruled on it. So I don't know why we're still arguing about this. And like I heard about the case in Douglas County where a teenage girl, I guess she claimed to be a boy, a school counselor or somebody like that was, in my opinion, was probably grooming her. And when the mother said, no, you're not a boy, you're a girl, and disagreed with her, the school official went to court and got custody of that child. And I'm thinking, where was the due process? Where was the case law? So as Attorney General, I will make sure the law is enforced strictly. And I'll, like with the porn in the schools, to include grooming and transgenderism, I will put the schools on notice. You're there to teach, not groom our kids. If you want to groom, go to a prison and groom, or another country. But you're not doing it to our children, and you're not going to violate parents' rights. And I had a lot of cases doing dependency and neglect that I was just, and I saw it over time. DHS got more and more and more aggressive. And it went from, we have a safety issue that we have to address, to, well, we have some concerns. The mom's not really holding the baby properly. Really? You don't take a kid away because you think the mom's not holding the baby properly. Are we going to start taking kids away because this mother gave her kids soda? Soda's not good for kids, but that's no reason to take the kid away. So they're getting very blatant about it and not even hiding what they're trying to do.
Yep. And that's exactly why some of these groups have sprung up, because, they've had enough. But what bothers me the most, I guess, is that school board elections are so anemic in participation. And it's like that, to me, I'm a grandparent. I'm a great grandparent. And I can tell you that, there's nothing more important than protecting the children and the generations that are coming up. Education should be about education, not indoctrination or grooming or political motivation, whatever. There's so many good teachers in the system, but there are a bunch of what I would call bad apples, and we know what they say. One bad apple can spoil the whole bunch.
Yeah.
But the problem is that the good ones are afraid to speak up because they get threatened with their jobs by the hierarchy, the people that are promoting this junk. And, we see it on social media all the time. I mean, I just read a story recently. Can't remember the state it was in, but this teacher took her entire elementary school class on a, quote, field trip to a mosque.
Wow.
And where they taught them how to pray to Allah. But these same people, if you were to take a class to a Christian church, would be making so much noise it wouldn't even be funny. But this is the kind of insanity that's going on. And then, the Muslims around the country are getting pretty bold, and people better wake up, because they have an agenda and they're sticking to it. And what I'm afraid of is it's going to end up, turning out badly for those people, because there's going to come a day when people are going to say enough is enough.
Yes.
And that day is not far off, in my opinion, in certain cases.
Yeah. No Sharia law. None.
Yeah, the Sharia law thing is real, but when you tell some people that, especially liberals, they just laugh at you. It's like, that's not going on. Oh, there's no grooming going on. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we can have drag queens reading to elementary school kids and performing sexual acts in front of them, that's okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, let me tell you a story real quick. I represented two parents. They wanted to sue the school and the sheriff's department, and because their son, who was 12, I believe, was coming out of a middle school, and it was end of the day, it was crowded, and he was trying to squeeze between a pillar and a group of kids on his left. And as he's walking through, this one girl gets spun around and maybe dropped her book or something. And this kid kept walking. He didn't even notice. He kept walking. His friend had to tie his shoe. This kid turns and stands there, is waiting for his friend, and this girl comes out of nowhere and comes up and pushes this kid. And they exchange some words, and then she leaves. Well, he's later charged, and they claim he assaulted her. When you slowed down the video, you saw he was almost past her. So either she intentionally or inadvertently put her arm out. It got hooked on his backpack. She got spun around. That was the end of it. They prosecuted this kid. My opponent and his office prosecuted this 12-year-old boy. And why? Because this girl claimed to be transgender. She claimed she was a boy. And the judge, to his credit, had this trial and said not guilty, and then looked at the assistant district attorney who prosecuted this boy and said, the only victim in this courtroom today is that young man you just prosecuted. So fortunately, he was able to walk free, but this kid had to have therapy. That's why his parents wanted to sue. And the parents believed, based on the evidence that they had, that the resource officer at that school lied about how many cameras and how much video there was. And they presented that to my opponent and his assistant. And the assistant apparently said, we don't care about perjury. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I've heard that one before too. That perjury might as well just be taken off the books in places, because nobody gets prosecuted for it. Even at the federal level, you see it all the time. And when it's obvious that they've committed perjury, nothing happens to them. So they're eroding the entire legal system and our constitutional rights by doing things like that. And people get conditioned to it. And then, when you see a real case and somebody maybe is aligned with that person, they'll say, that's no big deal. And it started way back when Bill Clinton did his little thing.
Oh, yeah.
He should have been not only impeached, but disbarred and everything else. But, this is the mentality, though, that's evolved over the generations, and people, the whole rule of law and morality and everything is just to the point where, people don't care. And that didn't happen overnight. That's been a consistent effort over the generations. I grew up in the 60s, so I know all about the rebellious mentality and all, but, and I always tell my kids, it says, I grew up in the 60s, but then I grew up.
Yeah.
And, I'm not proud of some of the things I did back in the 60s, but I can tell you, that it didn't stick with me. Whereas today, I always kid my wife. I said, when I see some of these people that were hippies that never grew up, and they still have the same mentality they had when they're 19 and 20. It's just, it's ridiculous. But, this, people are always complaining about accountability in state government. So how would you hold government agencies accountable when they violate the law?
Start prosecuting them. There's been so much corruption, fraud, waste, and abuse. It's just, you just got to start holding people accountable by the law. That's probably the easy answer. One of the things I've talked about on the campaign trail is I wasn't sure what questions I was going to get asked in different locations, and people would ask me about the Attorney General's office. So I looked up how many times Phil Weiser, the Attorney General right now, has sued the Trump administration. Personally, I thought it was going to be like 10 times. And when I looked it up this was like a month ago, it was 64 times.
Yep.
And I thought to myself, that's horrible. You know, people are worried about being able to pay the bills and their tax dollars, both state and federal, because the federal government's they're not pulling out of their pockets to pay. It's our federal and state tax dollars that are suing the Trump administration 64 times. Now, I can almost guarantee you just about every one of those lawsuits is frivolous and worthless.
Yep. Have you seen it brings to mind the ad that I saw a couple of days ago from Bennett, who was running against Weiser in the primary. And he said, my opponent does not hold the Trump administration accountable. And I was like, what? Have you read the number of lawsuits that he's filed?
Yeah.
But these guys are hilarious in their ads. I mean, this ad with Bennett and surrounded by a bunch of liberals, and he says, this is our state, and we're going to hold people accountable. And my thought was, well, when are you going to hold yourself accountable?
Oh, yeah. Well, they don't get it. They think that they're in the majority, or they believe that because they know they can cheat, they're going to win. That's my biggest concern. Yeah. If they are still cheating, then people like me have no hope.
Yeah. And well, that's the case. I mean, I'm curious to see what happens here in a couple of weeks with the primary, first of all. But the Republican Party is basically in turmoil with regards to what I would classify as grassroots versus establishment, and people don't like that, and people don't like the use of the term rhino and all. But I use it appropriately. Mm-hmm. The term is factual. Republican in name only. That means that if your actions show that you are basically a Republican in name only, mm-hmm. which a couple of our candidates are, and I won't mention their names, but people know who they are, and their voting record shows who they are, then what is wrong with that? Mm-hmm. That is not being that is factual. That's not being, that's not lying about someone. Mm-hmm. You're just telling people what their record shows they are. Yeah. But you got this faction, and you see it on social media all the time. It's, we got to stop fighting. We got to unify. Well, no, we're not going to unify behind somebody that doesn't stand for the Republican brand. Mm-hmm. My idol was Rush Limbaugh, and Rush always said, he said, we need to defeat them at every turn, mm-hmm. not cooperate with them, not what do you call compromise. That's their biggest word. We got to compromise, reach across the aisle. And Rush once time said, when you reach across the aisle, they cut your hand off.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying earlier. When it becomes about me, then it's time to get out. And too many of these rhinos they'll try and justify their voting record and say, oh, well, I voted for that because, and they'll throw out some excuse. But really, they're wanting to go middle of the road so that they can get reelected, so it benefits them. That's the time to go. Stand on your principles or get out. Well,
one of my favorite lines, when somebody tells me that we need to compromise and move to the center, I say, I will do that when you can show me one Democrat that has ever moved to the center.
Yeah, there you go.
Because compromise to them means do it our way.
Yeah,
that's their definition of compromise. So,
exactly.
I don't subscribe to that notion, and some people don't like me saying that kind of stuff. But you know what? We live in a state that's very corrupt. This notion that we have a gold standard election system is a joke. And anybody with half a brain knows that it is. But we have people, even on our side of the aisle, that will say, "Oh, we need to focus on other things. There's no election fraud." If we keep saying there's election fraud, then nobody will vote for us. Okay, well, yeah, Democrats won't vote for you, but that's what they like because that's what they want. All right, let's run into. I have some rapid fire questions here, so we can kind of get a feel for where you stand on certain issues. So, starting with mail ballot system, keep it, reform it, or replace it.
I miss the days growing up when I would walk into a school and walk into the booth and pull the lever and the curtain closes and I voted. I would go back to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sanctuary state policy, support or oppose?
Get rid of them.
Tabor, protect, modify, or expand?
Protect, 100%.
Red flag laws, support or repeal?
I want to go middle of the road, like the Club Q shooter that my opponent claimed he prosecuted. Apparently, according to what I'm told, that guy threatened to blow up his grandparents, and the red flag law should have applied there. And my opponent, again, according to what I was told, ignored it and didn't go and take his guns away. And then I don't know how a month or so, how much longer after that, he went and killed all those people at Club Q. So I think there is a place, but it has to be used very cautiously. And I love these constitutional sheriffs who say, I'm not enforcing that because it puts my people in danger. And everywhere you go, everything you do, there must be due process. So it should be here. Let's give you a notice. Come on in and let's talk about this at a minimum. But yeah, I'm kind of, I'd have to look at that some more.
All right. School choice, yes or no?
Yes.
Parents' Bill of Rights, support or not support?
Support.
And Colorado joining lawsuits against Republican administrations, appropriate or excessive?
I guess it depends on what the lawsuits are. I don't believe in frivolous lawsuits. And like with the 64 lawsuits Weiser's filed, I would get rid of almost all of them, if not all of them. And the ones the ones that I think may be good for Colorado, I would negotiate with the administration. I think you can get rid of all of them. You don't have to go to court. Where I think we may and likely will have to go to court is over water rights.
All right.
Well, we got to get our own house put in order first before we start suing other states. So,
okay. And real quick, in one or two words, what is the biggest threat facing Colorado today?
The corruption.
Okay.
Corruption and attack on parental rights. Those are my two.
All right. So, in closing, if voters remember only one thing about David Wilson when they cast their ballot in this primary, what do you want that one thing to be?
Speaks the truth and fights for you.
Okay, great. Folks, this has been an interview with David Wilson, candidate for Attorney General. If I'm not mistaken, you just have one opponent, correct?
For the primary, yes.
For the primary, okay. So go, what is your website? Give the folks a place to go learn about you.
It's david4ag.com. david4ag.com.
All right, 4 FOR or the number?
You can put the number 4 or FOR, either one.
All right, great. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate you taking the time, and we wish you the best in the primary. And hopefully we'll see you down the road.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Take care.
Okay, bye.
All right, folks, that was David Wilson, candidate for Attorney General. And we are up against the clock, so we will close out by informing you that the primary's up. I received my mail-in ballot today. So the ballots are out. Make sure you vote. There's no reason for you not to vote with a mail-in ballot. But this is an important election, so please vote. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America.